if you want to work in sports, you have to remove that fan hat. Yes, you're going to be around LeBron and Russ and like all these big names, but you can't be a fan because that's the one thing that they assess out really quickly.
What's happening? How you doing? This is Misha Horsey, the Business of Basketball. I'm here with Ricki Dean.
Hello.
And I'm so excited about this talk because, first of all, we went to grade school together.
Yes, we did.
So I'm so excited for everyone to hear about your journey and me. Like, I get to learn a little bit more about what you're doing now. But I would be remiss if I didn't give you the proper introduction. So I'm going to read it off. I typically don't do this, but this is for you. So you are the Senior Director of Player Engagement for the National Basketball Players Association. You have been just recognized as one of the Athletics NBA 40 under 40.
Yeah.
And I think that just speaks volumes to your impact in the basketball world and the NBA. And we'll learn, obviously, a little bit more about your journey, specifically how you got to be where you are now. But also, if someone is looking to be not in your position, but work within basketball, like, how do they get there? And then when they get there, like, how do they network up?
Got it.
So for people who don't know what the National Basketball Players Association is, tell us what that is. What does that mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the National Basketball Players Association is the union for active NBA players. It works as a typical union. If you were a firefighter, if you were a police officer, if you're a teacher, we have various services and resources available to players to support them on their journeys, both on and off the court, and as they transition out of or into retirement. So I work within our player experience group, and my team internally is called player engagement. Basically, it's my job to know NBA players. So internally, for everything that we're creating, from experiences to even down to like our player communication, my team kind of touches that and makes sure that it is like how players receive information and what the players want. So we hold those player insights. And then externally for players, for team player development staff, for agents, for player families, like we are the point people for any union service. So we're trying to streamline communication so they don't have to know like 10 different people at the PA and what they do. They'll just come to my team.
Got you. And it's interesting because you know me as the person who was like invested in basketball from playing basketball and, you know, obviously playing in college. And so when I saw you, I was like, what are you doing here? And you were like, yeah, no, I'm in basketball. This is what I do. So it was interesting to me to know where you are now. Was that always something that you considered, you know, when you thought about your career, or how did you end up in basketball?
So basketball was my first love, but I could not play. Can I curse on here?
Say what you want.
Okay, I couldn't play for shit.
Yeah.
It was in my heart. Much to my father's chagrin, I maxed out at JV in 7th grade. But my parents always said, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So I just took that mentality of like, all right, well, how can I make basketball or sports my career? And so when I was thinking about going to colleges, I found myself here, but it took like a series of steps in how I got specifically into player engagement. So when I was looking at colleges, I knew I wanted to go to a school that was like rich in sports tradition. One, selfishly because it would be fire games and a college experience. But two, I knew that alumni connection would help me and I could leverage that as I was looking for careers.
That's a gem.
So that took me to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, go Tar Heels. And so while I was there, freshman year, it was like an ad in the newspaper about being a manager for the women's basketball team. So I was like, well, a little extra pocket money. I get tickets. I can go to every game, have one of the best seats in the house right behind the bench. So I was like, cool. So while I was there, the women became my friends. And obviously at the time, which is getting better now, but the women's game was a lot different than the men's game. So they played in the W for a couple years, but they spent the majority of their careers overseas a lot of the time because the W is the hardest league to play in and maintain your roster spot in. It's only 144 roster spots right now. And so those W players that have that long career, they're some fucking beasts.
Yeah.
So I was worried about the girls, like they're my friends. I want to make sure that after the ball stops bouncing, that they're good. So that kind of sparked my interest in the player development space. Also coming into college, like I thought the only job in sports was to be an agent. So being a manager, I was like, whoa, there's so much more I can do in sports than just being an agent. After I graduated undergrad, since I only had that experience as a manager, as work experience, I wanted to go straight into professional basketball, but I didn't feel like that was enough experience for me. And I didn't want to go the traditional ticket sales route. So I was like, you know what? My sister at the time was graduating from Georgetown University. Go Hoyas, Hoya Saxa. And she had told me before that it was like a certificate program for sports industry management. And then I went to her graduation. I saw it was a master's program. So I was like, you know what? Let me apply. Also, I was thinking about going to law school senior year. Sorry, mom and dad. Y'all bought me all those books. I didn't crack one open. So I had to cancel my law school dreams, basically. So this was like my fallback option, which happened to be the best decision for me. I always say Carolina is what gave me the connections because I'm dealing with my friends, and having that kind of like check, they could vouch for me, helped and went a long way. But Georgetown is what allowed me to work in sports. And so at the time, which now more schools are doing it, but at the time, Georgetown was the only university that had sports executives teaching the courses and not tenured professors. So like my leadership, yeah, everything is aligned. Yeah. My leadership class, Tommy Shepard was the professor, and at the time he was like the vice president of basketball operations for the Wizards. He ended up becoming the GM. My finance professor was the CFO of DC United, and they were deciding if they were going to move the team to Baltimore and keep it in Washington, D.C. So these were all conversations that I was having. And in addition to networking up with my professors, I was networking across with my classmates too. And so while I interned at Georgetown, I was at the NFLPA and player services. And I'm like, if there's a union for NFL players, there has to be a union for NBA players. And so I went on the website. I saw that there happened to be a job opening. I just applied. Like I got an email back, I want to say like a couple days later, interview set up within a week. And a week later after that, I got the job.
It sounds like you were very strategic, right? Like that's not often where, people, when you go look for a degree, you're like, you're not really clear on what you want to do, but you have an idea. And I feel like you said, it was a line. Like every step was like, almost like crafted. You know what I'm saying?
I just knew generally I wanted to work in sports. I didn't know exactly what, and it was just all my steps were just happened to be aligned. It makes sense. And it was experiences that I was having that kind of showed me what I wanted to do. And so I just leaned into that.
Right.
And even at the PA, like my trajectory, I started off as an executive assistant. So it wasn't even like I was doing player engagement or player development. It was just like my opportunity for a foot in the door.
Right.
So.
And it also sounded like too, like as I was looking at your LinkedIn, I'm like, these steps were like things that, like you said, interned and executive assistant, and then you worked for the Spurs a little bit. So tell me about your experience there. Like, what was your position? What'd you have to do?
Yeah, so when I was with the Spurs, that was the 21-22 season, and I was player engagement and family services manager. And the reason I left to go to the Spurs was I had reached somewhat of a ceiling at the PA at the time. And I knew going to a team would give me more like hands-on experience with the players. Because from a unit standpoint, we're like very much macro. We represent all 450 NBA players. And so while I have one-to-one relationships with guys, it's not the same as if I saw them day to day. So going to the team side, it kind of opened up that door and allowed me to experience, okay, like what's the average day like for a player? If it's a game day, what time are they getting to the arena? They have a pregame nap, or what time is practice over, and how do off days work. All of those little things and those intricacies I wouldn't have known if I didn't go to the team side. And then when I came back to the PA, I used that experience to help me do better in my new role when I return.
Yeah. So tell me what, for people listening, and if they look at your position, they're like, oh man, I definitely kind of want to try to see what that's like, right? What is your day to day? Like if you can explain your schedule. And then I know every day probably looks different.
Every day is an adventure.
But if you can, for someone trying to get some insight on your particular role, what is a typical day like for you?
Okay, typical day.
Yeah.
So when we're in season, if I'm in New York, I go to Knicks and Nets games. So I typically don't get home until like 11 o'clock, 11, 12 o'clock. So I normally get in the office a little late.
Mhm.
But depending on the season, I think is a better descriptor of like what my average day is like. So in season, I love it because everybody is where they're supposed to be and I know where they are. In season right now, this is November. We're getting ready for our All-Star meeting. So we have 2 board meetings every year, one during All-Star weekend and one during Summer League in Vegas. So we're getting ready to prepare for that. I manage our concierge program. And so we're constantly trying to onboard new vendors. We are revamping our communication strategy to players. So it's working with our comms team on, the monthly newsletter and figuring out what communication will be a text message versus an email, all those little intricacies. We're also in the process of doing union team meetings, which each team every year, typically we like to get them done before All-Star, will have a meeting with our senior leadership.
Mhm.
And so there's a little bit of follow-up that we're sending out after each team meeting. Let's see. I mentioned going to games.
Mhm.
So player engagement.
That's fun. That's
have
a
to
perk.
engage with players.
Yeah.
So just checking in, make sure they see my face. I've been doing a lot more travel this season. So that's most likely during the season.
Yeah.
A little mix of all of that.
Yeah.
And the off season is always the busiest season. So I would say our off season really starts in like May,
Mhm.
because the draft combine is like
Yes.
mid to late May. So work on that meeting because we have a meeting with all of the draft prospects. That leads into, we typically have one international experience around like beginning of June. So the past couple years it's been in Milan. But this year we're transitioning to somewhere on the continent. I'll keep that as a secret.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. Listen, one of these days, I'm gonna be one of the trainers that I'm coming. I'm coming.
Yeah.
Good.
So we're transitioning to that experience on the continent. So we're preparing and recruiting guys for that. We have draft. So during the draft, we'll have a lot of events and things with draft prospects, but then draft night in the green room, I don't know how I got this role, but I'm like the auntie with the magic bag that has everything in it. The last couple of years, I have gotten makeup off of shirts, sewn on buttons, stitched up a seam in a jacket. So I'm kind of like doing a little bit of everything. And then after draft, we have Summer League. Is Summer League? Yeah, Summer League next.
Yeah.
And so like I said, the second meeting is there.
And that's where I saw you essentially was the Summer League.
Summer League, yeah. So we'll have another meeting and then obviously games and stuff and talking to guys. And then after that, we have our second international program, and that is the Sanctuary. We go to the south of Spain, which is like a performance retreat for players, where it's literally we just have a court that overlooks like the Mediterranean Sea. It's a fire. And so guys can work out, and then I help curate, the experience. Like it's vacation, so they'll bring their friends, they'll bring their families, and so like curating experiences for them. And then after that, August is normally our quiet month, but last year we started doing more collaborations with teams. And so like this last August, we did an experience with the Pistons out in San Diego and then with the Raptors in Miami. So
Nice.
all of it is preparation for all of these things, keeping in touch with the guys, and then just internally if there's anything that we have to communicate.
So tell me about like what are some of the services that, like, let's say there's a aspiring professional athlete listening to this episode. What are some of the things that you do to help that within that transition?
So we actually, in my role specifically, we start our outreach at the high school level, I would say. So it's kind of like we touch them at all points. So by the time that they are ready to come into the league, they're at least loosely familiar with who the PA is, how we protect our players, and what services are available to them. On the mental health and wellness front, because that is a big one now, we actually have an internal mental health and wellness team. So every NBA team has a sports psych, but sometimes guys are like, you know what? I don't want to talk to a doctor that's related to my team. Like, yes, they have the, patient, doctor patient privilege and things like that, but I just want to be extra safe. So we actually have a vetted list of providers in every NBA market, plus a few other cities that our players tend to live in, to make sure that they have that safe space if they need somebody to talk to. They obviously will also, based on the relationships they have with us, will confide in us and we'll help them as well. But we do like to protect both players and their families because, to your point, it is a lot even for the families. And there's a mother's organization and there's a father's organization and there's a wives organization too to help them in their specific journey because this is new and scary for them as well.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of guys is making sure that, especially in those first couple years, it's like, okay, let's make the main thing the main thing, focus on basketball and keeping you here. And then, as you feel more comfortable with the transition, because if you're coming from college, it's a lot to go from 30 games to 80.
Yes.
And I'm going up against the best of the best. And I'm 18 years old and they're 35 plus.
Yeah.
So, and then the travel on top of that, you're on the road essentially like every other day. Like I did 10 days and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot do this. I can't wait to get home to my bed.
Yeah.
Nobody talked to me for the next 48 hours. And you have to be like a peak performer.
Yeah.
And
I'm interested too because, who's the profile, right? Like there's specific skills that sounds like that you have to be successful in this role. So what is it about who you are, the skill set you have, that allows you to be successful? If you can name a few maybe skills that help you in this role.
I would say being a people person, because I'm introverted. So I actually have to force myself a lot of times to like go up and talk to players because sometimes it could be intimidating. Like I'm gonna hold you. Like it's a couple players. I'm like, if somebody else could do it,
right?
I'm getting better. But I think like being a people person, being okay with being brave enough to like fight through the fear, I would say. Knowing when to be discreet, like when to speak, when not to speak, when to approach a player, when not to approach, like reading people, I think is probably like the most important skill, I would say. And that goes down to like, all right, if they just lost and had a bad game, you might want to wait if it's not urgent type of thing. So that's really important. And then players, it's funny because people see them as like these larger than life people, but I see them as like very vulnerable because a lot of times people always want something from them or trying to take advantage of them. And so I'm like, you know what? What can I do to separate from that? But make sure like they know I'm always a safe space. So establishing that, look, I'm not a fan. I love the game, but I'm not a fan. I don't want anything from you. I'm just here to like provide a service and protect you.
Yeah.
And so I think if you want to work in sports, you have to remove that fan hat. Yes, you're going to be around LeBron and Russ and like all these big names, but you can't be a fan because that's the one thing that they assess out really quickly. And I think that if you want to be in this role, you have to be able to like get that in check. You're Krista Chin, who's like the godmother of the NBA. Like she used to work at the NBA for 17 and a half years before she came over to the PA. And I think like 2015, she might've got there. She did get there like right before me, maybe the end of 2014. But if you look at old, like LeBron and all them getting in, she was the one that handed the hat. So I have women like that who are giants in this industry, like pouring into me, lifting me up, bringing me along to meetings, introducing me to people. And I literally just got to sit at her feet and just learn the business.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the catalyst for me to be the executive that I am, is because I learned up close from such a giant.
So yeah, it sounds like mentorship is key. So anyone who is currently working in the industry who wants to advance in their career, is there anything else outside of mentorship that you would suggest?
I would say don't sleep on your peers too. Like it's important to network up, but networking across is just as important, if not more important, because these are the people that you're going to be working with for the rest of your career. And so that's one thing. And as jobs are happening, like I got the Spurs job because a friend of mine said, "Oh, girl, you want to look at this? Are you interested? I can pass your name along." Like that's how it happened. It wasn't from a mentor. It wasn't from me on the job sites. It was just a friend of mine that
Yeah.
just sent it to me that's in the business. So I think don't always look up. You can also look amongst your peers
Yeah.
as that community. Because also, when shit gets hard or you're frustrated or you need to problem solve, going to your manager isn't always an option. And so sometimes you need that sounding board. Or, all right, how can we figure this out? How can we collaborate? What are opportunities that you have and opportunities that I have that maybe we can make each other look good?
Yeah.
So,
And also, I mean, I always say like relationships are worth more than money. Like it's so important. It's not like what can you do for me lately. It's like how can I add value to you.
yeah.
So let's go to someone who is not in the industry and they want to get in the industry. Uh, what is some advice to someone who wants to not only do what you do, but even just like, hey, I never played, but I love that, so I want to work
Yeah.
in there.
I would say two things. If you are in school, take advantage of the internships that are available for credit. That's the biggest thing I can say. If you are a professional, there are literally so many careers that have transferable skills. Like you can be a staff accountant at a union or at a team. So I would say focus more on the transferable skills. Like, what do you want to do? And that could be applied. You can find a role in sports.
Right. Are there any also two associations? Like I saw, I think on your LinkedIn you had like minority in sports. Does that still exist?
Yep.
Is there? Tell me more about what that is.
So minorities in sports it started from a group chat, my friend Shina. So it started from there and it was just like, you know what? We need community. There are other, I guess, unofficial groups like that where opportunities get shared around or resources get shared around. So we needed something for us.
Hmm.
And so from that, from the group me, it grew to like this entire company and organization that like the PA partners with on various events, that they have meet and greets with various agencies, at every sporting event. So it could be Super Bowl, it's All-Star, it's Summer League. It's an amazing organization. I'm a part of that. I'm a part of another group called Seeing Community, which is similar for minorities within this industry to just lean on each other when we have questions, when we have problems, when we just need to vent. We need that safe space. And so that's what those groups are for me.
Nice. And are there any other, I guess, organizations that you know of that are like maybe feeder systems into sports?
So Minorities in Sports actually has a collaboration with a couple college universities where they have chapters on this. I know Penn State was the first chapter. There are a couple more. I don't know off the top of my head, but they do have a presence. And then what's good about Seeing too is they have a mentoring program for like kind of entry level positions to be matched with someone of a higher title. So, like, for example, I was a mentor for the Scene group. Shout out to Malcolm Ruffin for all the work that he does because he was like, you know what? I have the perfect mentee for you. And he was absolutely right. Sydney Lawson is the perfect mentee. But there are a lot of opportunities within those two groups. Those are the ones that I'm most active in. I know Women in Sports and Events, WISE is another one. Um, but I would just say, just research,
Yeah.
to be honest, and see what fits for you.
Yeah. That's dope. So our podcast is about like finding your dream job in basketball and then being able to sustain that. Throughout your trajectory in the basketball industry, you've obviously been able to do that. Tell us how. Like, how have you been able to develop a sustainable career within this industry?
I would say always be willing to learn and adapt on the fly. Like we just recently, a couple months ago, a couple months, maybe like April, went through like a restructuring within the PA.
Mhm.
And so like I have a different manager, I have a different team, like the responsibility is different. And I'm constantly learning on the go. But then also just like connecting with people on a human level, like outside of work. How are you doing?
Yep.
How's your family? Let's grab drinks. Like those types of connections. That's what helps improve the work relationship is if you for those that you connect with, you can develop that personal relationship too.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes like this network and this buzzword, right? It's just like it's so icky.
I hate networking.
Yeah,
I go to a networking event, I'm like, I need to stay with my friends because this is overwhelming.
yeah.
It's overwhelming.
So everybody has like their like highlight story, within working in the basketball industry, right? And so I want to know, like, what was that moment where you was like, that pinch me moment, like, oh my God, I'm actually here. You know what I mean? This is crazy.
So Allen Iverson is my GOAT.
Yeah.
And when I started at the PA, everybody knew that's my hall pass. Like, if I get close to Allen Iverson, don't mind me, I'll be okay. And like, I don't fangirl over anybody. Even Kobe, I didn't fangirl over Kobe. But Allen Iverson, I lost my mind. So, and to the point, like, I used to keep, because I had like his rookie year jersey in my office desk, just in case he came in, I could have it there ready to sign. And of course, I got approved before that happened. But anyway, so this was in like 2016. We were hosting a Players' Voice Awards. And at the time, like, we did it because guys were, saying that sometimes the end of season awards didn't reflect, how they felt as players, and it's voted on by journalists, and what do they know about who's the hardest, best defense or defender and all that type of stuff. So we would send out a survey with like awards and players would vote. And so this year we did like an actual award show. And so Allen Iverson was honored with, I want to say like the Trailblazer Award. So I was like, okay, this is my moment. Because a couple times it was like, and Krista knew I loved Allen Iverson. So she would be like, AI is supposed to come in today. So I would be ready and then he wouldn't come. So we get there to the awards. I'm like, this is my moment. Like, I know he's going to be here. So I'm at the hotel. He arrives to check in. So like, I'm at the end of the desk and he's like at the beginning. I'm like, okay, like, this is my moment. Lock in, like, don't freak out, but we're freaking out. So he gets down to me and my coworker is like, and this is Ricki Dean. And I'm like, hello, it's so nice to meet you. And he's like, oh, nice to meet you too. And I kept it together, right? And so this is like the check-in desk. So he like goes through, gets everything he needs, and he's going off to the elevator. And I'm like, I can't believe I just blew it. And that's all I said was, hello, nice to meet you. Like, no.
You get shook.
I followed that man to the elevator. No shame. I followed him to the elevator. I'm like on my phone, standing there waiting for the elevator to come. We get in as soon as the doors close, like, I said, oh my God. Excuse me, I just want to let you know I am from Philly, born and raised, and you were my Michael Jordan growing up. Like, I went to Carolina, so I don't say that lightly, but you were my Michael Jordan. And he was like, that is the greatest compliment anyone can ever give me and has ever given me. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, Allen Iverson just said my compliment was the best that he's received.
You can't tell me no.
Girl, I was floating. And then he talked shit about Carolina. And I was like, well, I went to Georgetown for my master's. So like,
here we go.
I'm a Hoya too. He was like, all right, you should have led with that. Then you should have led with that. So I was like, he's still Chuck. He's still going to talk shit. But that was just a very special moment that we had. And I will cherish it for the rest of my life. And it's funny because I saw him again at All-Star in Indy last year. And I spoke to him again. Like, I reminded him of that story. He was like, I don't remember that, but that's definitely sound like something I would say. So I'm like, this was everything to me. And to him, it was just another Tuesday. But yep. And so like, I do have a picture with him finally. Because at first I was like, we just had that moment. There was no way to ask for a picture. So I got my AI picture. So it was just, that was the moment for me that I could do nothing else. Yeah. And that was like life-changing.
AI is Philly's GOAT. Like, you know what I mean? He changed, for me at least, like I would say, like even now, there's no experience like when AI was playing.
Oh, no.
It's...
And there's nobody that's going to mean that much to the city as he did.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody will ever embrace the city like he did.
Yep.
Like, I used to beg my parents to go to Fridays on City Line Avenue.
Club Fridays,
just to get a glimpse.
Yep.
Just to get a glimpse.
Club Fridays was popping.
Ain't nobody doing that.
Yep.
Ain't nobody doing that no more.
And he not even from Philly.
No.
And you would think, because when he comes to Wells Fargo, everybody is like standing ovation.
But that's what I'm saying.
Time.
Like, he embraced everything that the city was, the grit, the grind, the hustle, we not asking for permission. We're going to be authentically us. Like, he does not change for anybody.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of like the core of who Philly is as a city and who we are as Philadelphians.
Yeah.
So, yeah, ain't nobody gonna touch AI. Like, I need him to get a bigger statue, Sixers.
All facts. They wild out. Y'all wild out with that.
I get it because everybody's bust is like that or statue is that size.
They are.
He needs one outside the new arena for sure.
And even like think about what he did for culture in general. Like
the NBA,
like the braids.
The braids, they're the reason. He's the reason why they had the dress code. Yep. And now look at Trey Mann. Trey Mann is straight up out of AI's closet, and I'm here for it. Yep. I am here for it. So like that's why we gave him the Trailblazer Award, because like he literally is one of one, and he came into a league where at the time like a lot of people were just going with the flow, and he was like, no, I'm swimming upstream. Like this is who I am. I'm not about to change who I am. This is why I got here, how I got here, and I'm going to honor myself and be true to me.
Yeah, that's dope. That's a huge moment, and that's one that you'll obviously forever remember.
Forever.
So how we wrap up the show, we just talk about like how you're grateful for the game, right? Like, you know, basketball has done so much for me.
Yeah.
Why are you grateful to the game, and what has the game done for you?
I am grateful to the game because I truly love my job, and I feel like I'm walking in my purpose. So I will always give my all because it's given me so much. It's taken me around the world. Like my first time in Africa was with the league. Like I went to the first ever Africa game in 2015, and to get off that plane and the first words being said were "welcome home." Like
goosebumps, yo.
So the game has literally given me so much. I can only pour the same back into it. And because I love the game so much, I respect the game so much. Like I just love what I do.
Yeah.
And so that makes the long nights, the weekends, the holidays, the 24/7 being on call. Like I have my phone here because who knows if somebody will call or text or need something. It makes all those moments worth it.
Yeah. Ricki, I thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you. Your story is important. I don't take it for granted at all. I know you got so much stuff you got going on. It's the holidays. So you're going on the road tomorrow to be with your family. So thank you for being here. Your voice is so important. Someone is going to hear this and be super inspired by the possibility of working with NBA players in that way. A lot of people just know about coaching and working with NBA players at a high level, but you're talking about a role which people traditionally don't really know about. So, and that's the point of the show, is to provide exposure and awareness to opportunities. And you've done that.
I will say, if you are listening to this and you are inspired by anything I said, my charge to you is to pass it on. Because somebody always took the time out for me to guide me, to give me advice, to look out for me. And so I always take that. If somebody reaches out to me, I'll always make time. So I'm charging to you to pay it forward and do the same.
That's a wrap, y'all. Look, so if you got anything from this video, in this episode, please leave a review. If there's any questions you have for Ricki, I'm sure she's going to look at this episode and she'll respond. Is there any way, if someone is interested in learning more about what you do, how can they reach out to you?
You can hit me up on LinkedIn. I think my name is like Ricki C. Dean, Ricki Ricki, like Ricki Lake, Dean Dean.
And I'll link it on the show notes too. Take care, y'all. See y'all on the next one.